Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today we are looking at the Delaya class Courier vessel. This was a Galactic Republic military ship developed at about 4,000 BBY. Um, it was designed and built by the Horsch Kessel Drive Incorporated, while the company was owned by Doros. Okay, so characteristically, the Delaya class Courier was designed to match a starfighter for speed and maneuverability. Unlike Corellia's Star Drive's Coruscant class heavy Courier, most of the ship was inhabitable. The complex automatic systems integrated into the craft allowed it to be operated by a single person. Um, uh, This aerodynamic ship had an insectoid appearance and featured 21 HKD ion engines. These engines were set in blocks of three on servo-controlled mountings to negate the need for maneuvering thrusters. The Courier was also lightly armed with only two rotating laser cannons and one proton torpedo launcher. For further agility, the computer system controlled multiple layers of extendable vanes and aerofoils. This ensured that the Courier had a good aerodynamic shape during atmospheric travel. Um, all right, so this was done. Known ships: the Sun Gem for Jedi Master Akeda Jeth's transport, which is from the Tales of the Jedi miniseries, which is from the Old Republic. And I do kind of vaguely remember this. From there, I did not read the book, so I mean, you can yell at me as much as you want. That's perfectly fine. All right, so we do have a Star Wars Game Master screen revised. Has some stats on this. We also have the Essential Guide to Vehicles and Vessels, Star Wars Role Playing Games Second Edition, revised and expanded. So this was done during the West End Games or RPG series. Tales of the Jedi Companion, Power of the Jedi Source Book, um, and a complete Star Wars encyclopedia. That's where we get all of this from. Now, looking over at what we have here, if I can bring up my right window. All right, this is what you guys have been looking at, but I was looking at a different screen, so we could try and give you as much information as I can. So this ship is about 70 meters in length. It is at starfighter scale. It is considered a space transport, but they're again depending. It goes off the scale here, more so because we do have some fairly large ships, but they'll still be at starfighter scale. Okay, it does require a crew of two, easily done by a crew of one, but it's only a +5, so it's not that bad. It's got the extra computer controls to try and help negate any shortcomings. We are able to have passengers of 8. It can hold 10 tons of cargo and has 2 weeks of consumables. Brand new, it would have been 85,000 credits, and used, it's going to be about 45,000 credits. Depending on what era you're going to find it, if you can find one at all, probably about 45,000. Um, I don't know. It would be an interesting concept to say that you're going to find a ship from 4,000 years before, and it's still going to be flyable and all that, not kind of mothballed for parts or something else. So keep that in mind here. Hyperdrive, I had a times 7, which was not bad for the time, I believe. Hyperdrive backup is a times 15. Of course, it would have a nav computer, which is not listed on this, but I would say it would have one. Maneuverability is a 4D. Like it said, it was supposed to have the vanes and everything, so it could um, handle doing things on its own, kind of compete with the starfighter. Space is at a 7, so that's pretty respectable. In an atmospheric flight, it can go up to 950 kilometers an hour. It does have a hull of 4D. Now the shields is 3D, and or shields is 4D and this is 3D. So I know when I was putting the pictures in here to kind of mess with the space, I don't know if it messed with the shields here. Um, Sensors, it only has a passive and an active scan. We have 10 kilometers for a passive and an active scan at, or 1 kilometer for passive, I'm sorry, and active scan is 1.5 kilometers out. It does have the proton torpedo launcher with a fire control of 1D, which probably for its time frame could be pretty respectable. Um, Damage is 10D for a high yield and 7D for normal for its time frame. Now, if you're going to bring it up and load it with today's, I would say it would probably be a 8D. I'm thinking. No, wait a minute. Proton torpedoes are a little less damage. Let me double check that because I have the book behind me yet because I'm kind of keeping a small collection of books behind me. And of course, I have it upside down. Okay, so as we look up the proton torpedo launcher, and I passed up my page. Let's see, proton torpedoes do 9D damage. So if you're going to modernize it and say you're loading it with the current, or you just upgraded the launcher, although the modern launchers aren't doing like a high yield where it's shooting out multiple torpedoes. Um, you know, it kind of depends on the era you're playing. If you're leaving it in the 4000 BBY, I think it would be perfectly fine. If you're bringing it into the more modern, like the um, original trilogy, or even into the Clone Wars, I think you would want to up the damage to a 90 for normal, and then probably add another 2D for the high yield. And it doesn't say exactly how many torpedoes are there in its magazine. Um, so I would probably give it a magazine capacity of maybe 8. Just throwing that out there. Um, it's all up to anyone's interpretation as far as that goes. Laser cannons. It's got 2 of those fire linked together, and we have a fire control of 2D, so that's pretty good, and a damage of 4D, which would really be good for its time frame. Being an older fighter, one of the things West End Games was really good at doing was, when ships were older, they did they went a little bit slower, they did a little less damage, and some people had jokingly commented that if West End Games had kept going, the fighters, you would have seen a slow fighter by the time, if you were to take it into the Disney War era of the sequel, your standard starfighter would probably be going a space of 12 for a standard, and probably out to maybe like a space of 20 or something like that. Um, there does come to be a threshold, and we see that in today's modern aircraft, where we only reach a certain limit, and because we're kind of fleshy and mostly water, and most of the beings that we see in the Star Wars galaxy are rudimentarily the same as humans. Same faults in our construction and all that. We're mostly bags of water that take that from Star Trek. Um, we have limitations. We can offset it with technology and everything else, but there are certain limitations, and how much gain are you really going to get out of that extra speed? Um, at a certain point, are you going too fast, and it's hard to really maneuver the ships very well? Um, so keep it in that regard. Uh, Anyways, that's my take on it. Now we do have a nice. This picture looks more so than what you'll see in the thumbnail. Um, More of a buggish look to it. And then, of course, this is actually taken from a schematic that was done for the role playing game itself. So, as you can see, it is a fairly straight line through. I can try and blow this up a little bit here. and we'll see how much into the wording we get. And as you can see, we have a cockpit for the two personnel with an extra 4 seats in here. We have some sort of this is 3 is navigation, 2 is our library. Remember that this was more of a Jedi ship, so in that regard, um, let's see, 5. These are escape pods. We have a workstation, um, a bathroom here, cargo hold, um, passenger cabins, and the like. Um, it is a very interesting design. 15. What do we got? We have a medical bay, a nice sized medical bay. Um, when people, I always laugh at when these scenarios come up and people will say which one's better, Star Wars or Star Trek, and all that, because I'm a big fan of both of them. I think they both have very similar merits, and it depends on the context that we're really talking about here. Um, we can have ships that are very, very similar in their capabilities. Um, Gene Roddenberry had set up his vision of what a ship should look like, and he had kind of taken it from um, his group of artists. And of course, George Lucas had his ideas. He wanted ships that looked like fast racing cars and speedboats and those things. And um, they took it from different views. Uh, but when you really look at the genres themselves, one is dealing with a big crude ship compared to the other one having a small group or a handful of characters running around on their own. And that's the way I've always really looked at it. I do love a lot of the designs of Star Trek, but the Star Wars, because it's a small group meant to be a small group, doing it in a role playing game sense, I really think that Star Wars kind of wins in those regards because now you're used to doing everything as a small group. Um, Whenever you do Star Trek, you have to try and whittle it down so you're stuck with a small group doing away missions or whatever else. And you have to get them to rely on it themselves instead of saying, hey, we have a big ship full of people, and how do we do this? Well, we just call out more people and they can handle these other issues. So, but those are my takes on it. I think it might be a little kind of universal. You can easily ask an engineering department to send down a couple extra people when you're dealing with a bigger ship. We can easily do that in Star Wars when you're talking about, they're going to have their own engineering issues and all that. And you can bring a lot of these stories back and forth. They may handle these things differently because they have a different type of charter, but there's a lot of merits that you can bring similar missions from one uh, franchise to another. I guess would probably be about the best way to see it. How people handle it is going to be on their own accord, and if you look at as an organization how they handle it will be completely different ways. I think if you look at how the Klingons handle things is going to be a little bit more similar as to how you're going to see a lot of the Imperial handling of things. We're gonna deal with things with a hammer, and we're gonna put a nail in it, and we're gonna hold things down. Compared to being very big degrees of diplomacy and everything, very diplomatic on how things are done by the Federation. So, all right, well, that's the ship of the day. Another interesting design, one that we don't typically get to see. Hope you enjoyed this series. As always, it's a wonderful experience bringing all this stuff to you. Hope you're having a wonderful day, and we'll see you in the next video.